Go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. My name is Wendy Liu. I'm the product marketing lead for Checkr Trust, and I am joined today by our staff engineer, Scott Agnew. In today's webinar, we're going to talk about the limitations of traditional know your customer processes and discuss how to leverage a multi-layered approach for comprehensive risk management. A few housekeeping items. The webinar is being recorded and will be sent to your emails after the webinar. We also encourage you to send any questions that you might have throughout the session using the Q&A function at the bottom of your Zoom screen. So for those who are unfamiliar with Checkr Trust, we just want to provide a quick background. We are an affiliate company of Checkr, which is one of the largest employment background check providers in the country. Checkr Trust provides KYX risk intelligence for non-employment use cases built on industry-leading criminal, identity, and driver data. Now, you might be asking, what is KYX? Well, it's kind of a take on KYC, but on steroids. We know that risk looks very different if you are a caregiving marketplace compared to a financial institution or even an online dating platform. So we believe that KYC is not a one-size-fits-all. And we give you the data and the tools to really identify the risks that matter to your business. So KYX could be know your guest, know your visitor, know your driver, know your user, and so on and so forth. Today, Checkr Trust powers over 10 million screens per month across online marketplaces, physical security solutions, and businesses, helping them protect their customers, drive more revenue, and scale with confidence. So before we dive into the hidden risks that KYC doesn't effectively catch, as well as our demos, I think it's important to take a step back and ask, what is the actual purpose of KYC? Well, the primary goal of KYC was actually to protect financial institutions and broader ecosystems from being used for illegal activities such as money laundering, terrorist financing, fraud, and/or corruption. More broadly, KYC aims to really answer who this person is and what harm or risk they present. So while KYC has long been a standard in financial institutions, this concept of knowing your customer can be an effective risk mitigation framework to answer the question, should this person have access to your community, to your services, to your assets, and more? So let's talk a little bit about the challenges and risks of traditional KYC. The first is that traditional KYC is fundamentally treated as a mere compliance checkmark. KYC can provide a false sense of security instead of actually helping you de-risk your business. So long as KYC is treated as a checkbox of identification and some rudimentary security watch list, you're not actually mitigating real financial or even physical harm. Secondly, most KYC providers are playing catch up to the risks that AI presents in fraud. Generative AI has played a massive role in increasing the frequency, severity, and the quality of fraud tactics. In fact, Deloitte predicts that generative AI-driven fraud losses in the US could exceed $40 billion by 2027. With deepfakes, synthetic identities, digital fraud, document fraud, scams are just becoming harder and harder to detect. And lastly, most KYC providers don't provide criminal history. This is leaving a significant gap in their risk models. The US Sentencing Commission actually found that 52% of fraud offenders have prior convictions on their record. Running traditional KYC fails to identify these high-risk individuals from your platform. So when we think about risk intelligence, the reality is that there will always be pros and cons and gaps in each data set or solution. That's why we think of data in a Swiss cheese model, where multiple layers help address gaps to provide more comprehensive coverage. Identity really is just the starting point. And to effectively reduce the risk on your platform, you have to layer in additional risk signals to assess the individual before letting them engage onto your platform. For example, if your organization serves vulnerable populations like minors, you should ensure that the user doesn't have any crimes against minors in their history. Or if there's some level of in-person interaction, You want to know if that user presents any risk of physical harm based on their convictions or even warrants. Another example, if you are a vehicle rental platform, you'd probably want to know if they have ever committed grand theft auto. These are the levels and different layers of criminal history that you can layer into your risk models to make a more comprehensive decision on what kind of access they should have to your platform. So in addition to identity verification, Checkr Trust offers direct access to source data across court records, arrest data, warrant data, sex offender registries, and global watch lists. And each of these data points provides valuable insights into an individual's background to help you assess their potential risks. So let's see this all in action. I'm going to pass it over to Scott for the demo portion.
Thanks, Wendy. Nice to see everyone today. The first product I'll be showcasing today is PI validation. This is a fast and frictionless way to verify that an identity exists out in the world. It compares the PII you provide against a database of 9 billion different kinds of records to see if all of those things kind of go together. Identify the best matched entity amongst those and tells you whether the PI provided matches that criteria or not. Um, so I'll go ahead and share my screen and walk through that. So being a API first product, I'll walk you through how this works. We're going to start a PII validation for Tommy Lee Jones with this birth date. You can provide a variety of fields as documented in our API docs. So we take first name, last name, and DOB are required, but phone, email, SSN, address, and we see whether all that correlates together. In this case, we see that the first name, DOB provided are all matching, and so it's an overall score of 100. And additionally, the PII provides a result context, which gives more details about why it got to this result. So, in this case, it's providing us the context that an email address was not provided. And hey, this was a notable celebrity, so probably everybody knows this PII, something like that. And there's a variety of things that can come out of this. If I provide PII which doesn't match, and in this example, this could maybe be a good frictionless way to catch typos, for example, in the information that people provide to you. So we provided an email that doesn't match tommylee@gmail.com, and we get a different result. Our database also provides 99% coverage of mainstream US populations and 95% of Gen Z consumers who often have limited information in these sorts of identity records. The next thing we can talk about is the biometric document verification, which this is a bit of a step up from the frictionless PII validation. And this takes we want to verify that a given identity actually belongs to the person you're dealing with. And we do that by having them provide a ID, either a passport or a driver's license or, various state ID cards, national IDs. It conducts a liveness check and document forensics to verify that the picture you're looking at is a real license, and also collects a selfie so it can compare the selfie against the picture on the document and verify they match. So this might be a step up from a PII validation workflow. And to start that process, I also want to mention that I'm using some test documents. So I'll be taking a picture of a printed document. In real life, it wouldn't allow that, but in this case, we're expecting this document to be rejected for a number of reasons. So just for the sake of the demo. And into the document verification process, you can also provide PII optionally, which includes whether the PII matches what's extracted from the document in the ultimate decision that it arrives at. It's also optional to disable selfies if you don't want that particular step. So let's go ahead and kick this off. We can see that this returns a URL and a QR code, which is a base64 encoded image. And this you would send to your end user to let them go through our Webflow that collects the pictures of the documents. So I'm going to switch to sharing the screen on my phone. So I've received a text in this case. You might have seen on the API that we provided the user's phone number and a parameter that says we wanted to send them a SMS. So now we'll walk through our document gathering flow. Splash screen. We need to gather the user's consent. And then it uses the camera on the phone to take a picture of the document. We'll submit that. We gathered the front of the document. We have to gather the back of the document as well. Back of the document is mostly based on that barcode. And so we accept many types of documents, but there are a few cases where they don't have the barcodes. You can see in this case, it's not automatically grabbing it, so there's also a way to kind of manually capture the document. And finally, it'll capture a selfie. Excuse my messy home office. And that's all for the end user. So let me switch sharing again. So now that we have had the user collect their documents, we can either get that result by polling our API until the result is ready. Or our product will send a webhook back to you. I have a SaaS here that I use called HookDeck to receive those events. And you can see that I received a webhook from the Trust API. That's basically the same results as if you pull the API with a GET request. And so the results include a result, which is a accept, reject decision. There's also failed in the case that something happened within our Checkr Trust API or review, in which case that can be like if the document images look blurry or things like that. It's kind of a try again result. It also extracts information about the document type and the data that was on the document in that barcode. So name, last name, address, etc. And that same result context that we were looking at before. In this case, this document has many things wrong with it. The document pattern and integrity check failed because it's a printout rather than an actual document. The age didn't meet the requirements. This document is expired. So you can kind of see that you have a lot of context about what was wrong here. And you might decide based on that context to give the person another chance. In the case of an expired document, for example, that would maybe be a prompt for them to go to the DMV and re-up it. Cool. So now that we've done the docv portion of the demo, let's move on to criminal and public records checks. These checks access a huge database of 2,400 plus government sources, which can include court data, arrest records, warrants, sex offender registries, and like global terrorist watch list, things like that. And this has about 99% US coverage of court records, and so on. In this case, I will do this in our new dashboard. So I'm going to do a criminal check on a fairly well-known fellow. We'll do Justin Drew Bieber with a birth date of 0301, 1994. And there you have it. He has one misdemeanor conviction for this here. We also have if we go to the search history, we can see the history of all the checks we've run on this account. You'll notice that we had ran that PII validation earlier, and also the document verification. And then the criminal search we just ran shows that exact same thing. And finally, I will use we also support a book upload file, so you can upload a CSV that contains multiple sets of PII, and we will run all of those. So in this case, we have a CSV, which is Justin Drew Bieber, no birth date, and then again, that's the actual birth date of him. So upload the file here, upload CSV. Hello. Sorry for that blip. I had some internet connectivity issues. Not quite sure where I left off, but as far as the book upload history, I had submitted a CSV file, and here's the result of that. It completed. Download a file. Hmm. Might still be having some connectivity issues here. So apologize for that. So I think that wraps up our demo, and I'll hand it back over to Wendy.
All right, I will take it back over. Thank you, Scott. Let me just make sure that my screen is sharing. Great. So I think one important aspect to mention is that the data is only really powerful if it's actionable. And our customers are really using our API to create really powerful workflows to reduce operational burden and human bias while keeping their platform safe. So with any of our checks, they can be triggered based off of different rules. So for example, let's say that you want to run a PII validation as well as a criminal search. Well, you can run the PII validation first to make sure that there's no typos or no errors in the identity that you'll be running the criminal search on. It's also the most cost effective, so it'll be the lightest weight search. And then once you have validated that information, you can then run the criminal search on top, just so that you're kind of waterfalling your approach to risk management. And to really showcase our solution in action, I want to share a case study of one of our customers, Verkada. Verkada is a leader in the physical security technology space. Thousands of schools across the country use Verkada to manage visitors who are accessing their school properties. Checkr Trust is integrated with their visitor management system, and we help them screen visitors for criminal records like arrests, warrants, and sex offender records before they're permitted entry to their property. In 2024, we've screened 3.8 million visitors, and we've actually identified 3,700 offenders, helping Verkada and helping Verkada keep their customers happy and safe, and quickly identifying these potential risks during the visitor check-in process. We're going to head into the Q&A section here shortly. So if you have any questions, please drop them in the Zoom Q&A function. And as the questions come in, I'll just quickly highlight some of the business impact that Checkr Trust KYX solutions can have on your business. First, we can help you differentiate from your competitors. Companies are being held to higher trust and safety standards in crowded markets. And in crowded markets, this safety and trust can become your biggest differentiators. And as a part of that flywheel, trust is one of the biggest drivers in repeat customer business. So using our data can help you gain more customers, gain their trust, leading to more revenue and less churn. And lastly, federal and state regulations, excuse me, federal and state regulations are in an incredibly volatile state. And our solutions is really helping you keep a flexible approach to your risk mitigation strategies through our filters and workflows, again, helping you stay ahead of those regulations that may change. All right, so we have a few Q&A questions that have come in. Scott, I might toss a couple over to you on this as well. The first is, does the DocV product support global IDs? Scott, do you mind answering that one?
Sure does. Like I mentioned, we support most global passports and national IDs. Most of the state countries you would ask about are supportive. There's a few little exceptions, and it mostly has to do with having that barcode on the back that's machine readable. I think the one notable exception is the US passport card, not the book, actually is not supported. So,
Yeah, I found that interesting as well. Apparently it's like with the barcode issue.
yep.
Um, so another question here is, what is the difference between a criminal search and a background check? Are they the same thing? I can take this one. So in a background check, there are protected use cases of background checks, like in employment, tenancy, credit, and insurance. These are what are considered fair credit compliant under the Fair Credit Reporting Act. These background checks are used in these instances are much more extensive. They do what we call a county level search. They are much more detailed searches, and subsequently they are more expensive. They're typically in the $20 or above range, depending on what types of screens or searches you're doing. And they're typically a lot slower in terms of turnaround time. I think Checkr is one of the industry's fastest, and they turn things around in around 24 to 48 hours. But there are other providers who are more in the 5-day plus range. And when you're thinking about screening tons of folks on your platform or your community, having a dollar of 20 or having a cost of $20 per search or a turnaround time of 24 hours, those really aren't scalable for your business. In comparison, Checkr Trust can offer instant national criminal searches so that they happen instantaneously. You can check them right off and have that be triggered based off your API. So there's very little friction for your users. And they're usually under $2 per search, depending on your total volume of searches. We had another question here that was also about how fast the criminal searches are. Just kind of covered that, but they are instant. Another question, Scott, there was a mention of driver checks. Do you want to talk a little bit about what our driver checks product is?
Absolutely. I should have mentioned actually in the document verification biometric section. So that is very similar to like somebody handing you an ID and you're looking at it, right? And trying to make sure that that document looks legitimate, you know. It doesn't look like somebody cropped in a photo there. It is an actual document and not a printout like I was using today. So that is just verifying the authenticity of the document. It doesn't actually, it's not able to tell you whether that is, say, a legitimate driver's license number or, you know, if it's up to date with that state's DMV. So our driver checks do actually do that. They're able to talk to the state DMVs in 50 states plus DC and give in a driver's license number and some other inputs, generally first name, last name, date of birth. It's able to talk to the DMV and see whether that person is currently licensed to drive under that license. So there are two different checks we provide. The first one is your full motor vehicle record. So that will include a lot of details about previous licenses you might have had, you know, current license, endorsements on the license, so being able to drive motorcycles or commercial vehicles, etc. And also will include information about maybe suspensions, other incidents on your driving record, traffic tickets, blah, blah, blah. So those full motor vehicle reports can be kind of expensive. We do also offer a driver license status check product, which is really only about that. Are you currently licensed to drive um, passenger vehicles? Yes or no? And we have some limited coverage of that. I think the number of states is around 14, maybe. And those are a bit cheaper.
And what we found with some of our customers is that they actually pair the driver's license status check to check for, again, that they're eligible and they have a license that is valid and active. And they pair that with our criminal search to make sure that there aren't any relevant crimes like property damage or grand theft auto or a DUI or reckless driving, things of that nature, that would indicate that maybe renting a vehicle to them or renting some kind of other property like a peer-to-peer marketplace would be a high risk transaction.
For sure.
And let's see, we're coming up on time here, so I'm actually going to switch over to this last slide here. As we wrap up today's webinar, I want to remind everyone that we are offering 100 free criminal screens for all attendees, so you can test out our product for yourself. And if you're interested, please click yes on the poll, and we will follow up with you on how to redeem the offer. And for any other questions, please feel free to reach out to me. My email's on the screen, or scan the QR code to connect with a member from our team. And thank you again for joining us. Thank you, Scott, for going through the demo for us. And we look forward to helping you all enhance your risk mitigation and risk management strategies. Hope you all have a good day. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Cheers.